Hi there, welcome back to the Helen Olivia virtual workshops. My name is Lindsay and I am a designer at Helen Olivia, and I'm going to be leading you through this class. We are doing our Softest Pastel workshop, and this is a pre-recorded video, so feel free to pause as many times as you like to go at your own pace at home. So you should have your bucket of beautiful blooms and greenery. We've got this gorgeous pastel palette. You should have a vase in your bag of supplies as well as a piece of chicken wire. What you're gonna need other than that is a floral tool. So either grab a pair of floral clippers if you have them. If you don't have any, I suggest buying a pair. They're a great tool to have on hand and keep under your kitchen sink if you're foraging from your yard or bringing home flowers from the grocery store. I may use a paring knife occasionally, or a floral knife. If you have a smooth edged paring knife at home that you feel comfortable using, you can cut floral stems with that. But if you haven't used them before, I wouldn't suggest trying today. And alternatively, you can use a sharp pair of kitchen scissors. If your scissors are dull, they're not gonna work well, so sharp pair of kitchen scissors will do the trick. But again, floral clippers is a great tool to have, so that's what I'm going to be using most of the time. As I pull out ingredients as we go, I'm going to show it to you so you know what to pull from your bucket. And let me see if I can push this table up a little, get a little closer, so you can better see what I'm doing. So as I'm going, I'll pull the ingredients out and we will build this gorgeous pastel arrangement. And again, pause as many times as you'd like. That is the nice thing about a pre-recorded YouTube video. So we have a tea leaf in our bucket, and this is what we are gonna line our vase with. The first thing that you need to do after you've gathered your tools is fill your vase up with water. Room temperature or a little bit cooler than room temperature water is great. It will allow your stems to thrive. You don't want anything too cold because it can shock the flowers, and you don't want anything too warm because it'll make the flowers blow open a lot more quickly. So room temperature, a little on the cooler side, is great. And there are all types of flower food recipes online if you want to try something for yourself, but I've just got plain sink water in here. I'm designing on a Lazy Susan, so I can turn the arrangement as we go, but just make sure that if you're designing at home, you're giving your arrangement a nice little spin as we go to check all sides of it. Once you have filled your vase up with water, you want to leave a little bit of space at the top, like I did here, to make sure that as you're adding stems, you're not getting overflow and spillage everywhere. So that's why we leave a little bit of space. So now we're going to cut our tea leaf in order to fit into our vase. So if you have a pair of scissors handy, you can also do this with your clippers. We want to trim the edges just so they are straight. So the tea leaf has a curved edge. I am gonna cut my sides down just a little bit so you have a nice straight edge, and that straight edge will then sit on the bottom of your vase. So I'm gonna do the same thing on the opposite side. We only want to trim a little bit off just so you get a straight edge in the middle. So it's more rectangular shaped. This is quite a long tea leaf, so I'm gonna be able to cut off a little bit of the end where that hardy stem is that I've just stepped on. And when you've got this hardy stem, you want to kind of cut this out. When you're at home, it's a little bit harder to do, but I'm gonna take a knife and shave a little bit of that thick stem off. So I've just made this a little bit thinner. The other trick that you can do, since we're at home and that might be a little daunting to you, is just running the edge of your tea leaf on the edge of a table. So when you're running it around the edge of a table, you're making it more flexible, and you're gonna be able to bend that hard edge of the leaf. So now that I've kind of bent it in place, I wanna roll it up with the pointed side outward. So you can also cut the pointed edge off if you want to have a smooth edge there, but I'm gonna leave the point because I think it's pretty. So once you have cut your tea leaf down to size, place it in your vase. If it is still sticking up quite a bit past your vase, you can trim off the edges. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this with scissors since I've got them on hand. I'm just going around and I am trimming that excess off. There we go. So we just wanna make it have a really nice fit in there, and we want it to be flush with the vase. So we don't want our tea leaf to be sticking up quite a bit. We don't want it to be a lot lower than the vase either. So that's how I'm gonna place it in there. Once that is in there, you're gonna grab your chicken wire piece. So our chicken wire piece, we're gonna fold up into a little dome shape and get it into this vase. So we love to use chicken wire because it holds things really steady. You're gonna fold it a couple ways to get it in this vase. So I like to hold it long ways and then fold it, place your hands on it like so, fold it downwards by pinching your hands, and then fold it together like this. So when you do that, you should create this nice, smooth dome of chicken wire. And all of the little tangled bits are kind of tucked inside or more towards the bottom. So any sharp edges of the chicken wire you wanna make sure are tucked in, and you just want a nice little dome to stick into your vase. So when you're sticking this into your vase, you wanna squeeze it because it's not gonna go in there very easily with this leaf. So you wanna make sure that you're not having the chicken wire snag your leaf on the way in. So if you pinch it down a little smaller, then once you get it in there, use your fingers to stretch that chicken wire out and get it to fit to size. And when you're looking down at your chicken wire, you should have a nice open cage. You should see a lot of open grid for your stems to go through. You don't wanna see a big tangle. If you see a big tangle, or a lot of pointy edges of that chicken wire sticking up, try to kind of rotate it in your vase. Once that's in there, it should be flush with your vase. It shouldn't be sticking up higher, and it shouldn't be down crunched really low. So right at the edge of that vase, and we're ready to start putting things in. So once we have that in, we are going to grab our Oregonia. And it might take you a moment to get that leaf in there if it's the first time you've ever designed with a tea leaf, or get the chicken wire in there inside the tea leaf because it can be a tricky combination. Once you get that all set, then we're gonna grab our Oregonia. This is our beautiful Oregonia. We've got lots of it that we're using in this workshop, and I am gonna try to cut this up into as many pieces as possible. Now when you're cutting branches of greenery up, you wanna make sure that you're not cutting anything that would be too short to use. So I wanna make nice long pieces to ensure that they're long enough to use in this size arrangement. So for instance, if you've cut a piece this small, it's gonna be too short for this size vase. This is a 5-inch glass cylinder vase, and anything that's gonna end up with the stem not touching the bottom is too short. So anything taller is perfect. So we wanna cut up our pieces of Oregonia and make a little pile. I like to do kind of all the dirty work at once. So we're gonna get this cut up and then we'll assess how much we have. Cut these pieces, that's about as short as you can go, because you want your stems to be touching or almost touching the bottom, because that is the way they have the best chance of surviving in your arrangement. So once you have cut, and you should have like 3 or 4 nice sized pieces in here, because we are not using any hydrangea in this design. So just cutting all of this apart. This is gonna become the base of our design. There we go. So any of these little bits are sadly too small for this size arrangement. any of these down here, but if you have a bud vase in your house, you can definitely utilize those there. Once you have cut your pieces apart into what you think are the best sizes, we are going to strip off any of the lower leaves that might end up in water. You want stems to be completely clean when they're submerged, because otherwise it's just a breeding ground for bacteria. Anything that's left on the stem is gonna compromise the lifespan of your fresh flowers. So when we're stripping off low-lying leaves, we are just pulling off anything that's gonna fall below the edge of the vase. So we want to get these stems nice and clean. And this goes for every single thing that we're putting in our arrangement today. We want completely clean of any debris or anything that might cause bacteria growth in our florals. So any pieces like this, I'm gonna strip all of that off. Larger pieces like this. So just take a few moments to go through and get every single piece ready to be added into your arrangement. And Oregonia is really hardy, so you can also kind of snap the stems sometimes to break up those pieces. Ooh, something is tickling my nose. All right, so now I've got a nice little collection of clean stems. Ooh, I've got a couple more over here. Tickling. The allergies are strong this time of year. Okay, now I've got my really nice pile of Oregonia that I'm going to use. Excuse me. Ooh. Okay, so now we're going to start placing our Oregonia and building out the scale and size of our arrangement. So when we're adding this into our arrangement, we want to add everything at an angle towards the center of the vase. We don't want to add stuff straight up and down because this looks more natural when it's leaning. So I always like to start low around the edge of the vase and go all the way around in the circle. So I'm going to add a piece on each side all the way around the base of the arrangement. And we are leaning these pieces directly on the vase because these are our lowest pieces. So make sure that they are angled in there, but not so angled that they're not in water. You want to make sure that they are completely submerged in water. So now that I've got my lowest pieces in, I can start layering in more straight up and down. So now we're starting to build the height of our arrangement, and we want to keep angling in all the way around. And you need to give these guys a fresh cut as you are placing them. And this is called greening up our vase. So when we're greening up our vases, we're adding all of our types of greenery, possibly hydrangea if we've got it, because this just creates the base of the arrangement. So just continuing to add more and more, and now you can kind of start going a little more straight up and down to fill the center. So you want to have a really nice solid green up. You still want there to be little gaps, but you want it to have a really nice full shape. So now that I have greened up, I'm gonna add this one last little piece there for a little bit of height. I've got one long piece. Let's go. Right there. Okay, great. So this is our green up. This is what we're starting our arrangement with. Now we've got our next layer of our green up, which is going to be our Dusty Miller. So with our Dusty Miller, we have just this really beautiful, soft, gray texture that Dusty Miller brings to the table. You've got 2 pieces, so potentially you can use yours cut up into 2, or you can just use it alone. I have a nice little cluster here that I'm gonna use on its own, so I'm gonna give it a nice sharp angled cut. You can use your vase as a measuring tool to see how long you need the stem to be. And then I'm gonna layer this in between my Oregonia. So kind of hidden from the angle that you're at. But then I'm gonna use my other piece. I'm gonna strip off those lower leaves because they will end up in water. And I'm gonna give it a nice angled cut. And since I've only got 2 pieces, I'm gonna use them on opposite sides. So I've got 1 piece over here, 1 piece over here. We just wanna create some balance there. Once we have our Dusty Miller in, I want you to find your hyacinth. So this hyacinth should be kind of buried in your bucket. So be careful. Ooh, and I've got an extra little bud, which would be perfect for a bud vase, a little short for this arrangement. But you should have 3 blush hyacinth. And this is super closed version of it. It will open up really beautifully and continue to bloom and get bigger. I'm gonna layer this in now because it has really thick stems. And also the stems are soft, so they can easily be split by the chicken wire. So we wanna put them in now so we're not fighting with other ingredients or the chicken wire later on. So I'm gonna give it a nice fresh angled cut. We're cutting everything here at a 45-degree angle because we want as much surface area for the flower to drink through as possible. So nice angled cut, and then we're gonna layer these into our green up. So since we've got 3 pieces, whenever we have 3 of an ingredient, I like to do 2 on one side, 1 on the other, just to get that sense of balance. And you'll see that it is kind of a herd to get these in between chicken wires. So we want to put them in now so we're not fighting it later. And when we are placing them, if you feel a lot of resistance, pull it out and try a different spot because you're probably splitting the stem if you're feeling a ton of resistance there. So since we've got 3, I'm going to do 2 up high on one side, 1 down low on the other side. You want them to be nestled in and leaning on something. Hyacinths do not do well if they're leaning directly on the vase. Because of those soft stems, they will flop over really easily. So just be mindful of that. When you're placing them, you want to make sure that they are being supported or held up by another piece of greenery or something else, but we don't have anything else to hold them right now, so greenery it is. Once those are in, we're gonna start grabbing our roses. Now that we've got 2 types of roses. We've got our beautiful Playa Blanca, which is our favorite white rose that we use here. And then we've got one of my favorite roses is the Quicksand, which is like a washed out blush tone. So you should have 3 Quicksand and you should have 6 Playa Blanca roses. And we're gonna pull all of those out of our bucket. So every single one comes out, and then we're gonna clean all these roses up. So when we're cleaning roses, there's a couple different steps that goes into this. You want to pull off any of those low-lying leaves. So any of the leaves on the stem need to come off. If you've got leaves that are right up close to the top of the flower, you can definitely keep those on, but it's only taking away from the nutrients that the flower will get. So I like to pull all of the leaves off the stem. Those little green guys up at the top of the flower you need to leave on because that is holding the structure together. Once you've pulled off any of the leaves that are on the stem, be careful, there could be some rogue thorns on these guys. And if you have any thorns, you can cut them off with your clippers or scissors if that's what you're using, or a knife. And you can also press on them with your thumb and they'll pop right off. The next thing you're gonna do is pull off guard petals, which I just did without thinking about it. And when you're pulling off guard petals, you're pulling off anything that looks damaged. So really just any outer petal that might have like a bruised edge or a brown spot or is folded over or torn, you're gonna pull that off. So we're gonna do that with every single rose. So go ahead and take a moment to clean up your roses. So pulling off all of those leaves, any damaged petals, and getting them ready to place in our arrangement. Oop, there's a little thorn, you can cut it. Quicksands and playas both open up really beautifully, but if you want to kind of help your roses open a little faster, or you want them to look really open for, say, something you're hosting tonight, then you can blow on the center of them to kind of force them open a bit. Especially with the playa blanca, it will kind of open it up quite nicely. The other thing that you can do to open a rose a little more quickly is to roll it gently between your hands. You don't want to go much faster than this because you're going to lose petals, but it will kind of help it force open. So that's a couple things that you can do to help your roses open a little bit. It does feel silly, but it definitely works. All right, so now that we have our 6 playa blancas and our 3 quicksands, we're gonna start placing them. I always like to think of placing roses in duos or trios, and when I'm placing a duo or a trio, I always like to stagger them diagonally. I don't like to place anything right on top or right beside each other. It just doesn't look as naturally occurring. So always kind of staggering diagonally and then varying stem lengths. So leaving some a little bit longer, some a little bit shorter, to just create a little bit of a garden style feel. So since we have 6, I'm gonna start by placing one of our playa blancas, since that's the one we've got more of. And when we're placing our roses, I always like to start low and then build up from there. So always start with your lower roses down near the edge of your vase. So use your vase and the size of your green up to measure how long you might need the rose to be, and then start placing. So I'm gonna place my first trio, and I've got 2 playas. Whoops, adjusting where I want that one. There we go. 2 playas, a little bit staggered, a little bit diagonal to each other. And then I'm gonna place a 3rd, which will be a quicksand. So I'm pulling in 2 of the white and 1 of the soft blush to create that first trio. So that is my first little trio. And once you have one trio, you can give your arrangement a turn and pick the next space that you wanna place your roses. So since we've got a quicksand here, I want to start with a playa here so I don't have 2 quicksands right next to each other, because I want that soft blushy tone on all sides of my arrangement. So next trio is going to go in over here. I've got 1 playa to start. And then anything that we're putting up top, we want to leave those stems a little longer because they need to reach the bottom of the arrangement. So there's playa number 2 in that grouping, and then I'm gonna come in with a quicksand to fill out that trio. So now we've got our next trio in place. So that leaves us with our last little gap here, and I am going to start with a quicksand on the bottom this time because I've got a quicksand here, here, and then I want to get one here, so I've kind of got a hit of that color on every side. There. And then placing my 2 playas. So playa and final playa. You can always trim them down if they're too long, but you can't make them grow back. So make sure that when you're placing them, You might leave a little more length in the beginning until you get used to how long you need to leave your stems. So that is the placement of our roses. They're nestled in on all different sides. You've got that color on each side of the arrangement. And now, since we've got those placed, we are going to grab our spray roses. So these are our bashful spray roses, and we are going to get these cleaned up. And when we're cleaning up these spray roses, we want to pull off any of the buds that are quite low, like these two are. So sadly, we're going to pull those off. Again, if you have a bud vase, you can absolutely use those in your bud vase, and you can trim those off. But we want just a nice cluster at the top. We want them to be relatively close in height. So again, anything that's super low, pull off, and then you're gonna pull off any of the lower leaves. Same goes for this last one, any of the lower leaves, and any of the really low buds. Like this guy is really low. If you have any that are damaged or falling off, then pull those off or cut them off. And then for these spray roses, I actually love the look of them just as is without fussing too much with the guard petals. So I am not as picky when it comes to this variety of spray rose. I'm only gonna pull things off if I actually see damage. If they are kind of ruffled back, that's totally okay because these open up really nicely. So you're not really gonna see the damaged edges as they're kind of flexing out in your arrangement. So I am not as picky, but I still will take a moment to pull off anything that actually has damage. So anything that's got brown spots, totally pull it off. But if it's kind of curling back, that is the way that this spray rose goes naturally. So I'm gonna let it do its thing. Once you have your spray roses ready to go in, we are gonna spread these out in our arrangement. Nice, sharp angled cut. And then we're gonna place these. So these are your perfect filler flower. They're gonna take up space, they're gonna fill holes, and we want to get this little delicate spray rose accent on each side of the arrangement. So nice angled cut. There. So since we have three, I have taken kind of one on each side of the arrangement. They're also, again, like I said, a great filler, so it works really well to fill any gaps. Now we are on to our peonies. So we've got these beautiful peonies with us, and these are a blush peony variety. I have one that's open and two that are not yet open, which is actually amazing because that means you're gonna get a lot of life out of these two that are not open. So don't be worried that yours are not open. They always come into us at kind of different stages. So if yours aren't open yet, just know that that means your arrangement is gonna have a nice long life and your peonies will probably outlive a number of other things in there if you take care of it properly. So with our peonies, we really just want our stems to be nice and smooth. So anywhere that you've got these little nodules on your stem, we want to kind of give those a little shave. And alternatively, if you are using a clipper or a scissor, you can do the same thing just by trimming. So we just want those to be nice and smooth so they slide into our arrangement easily. So we're gonna get these all cleaned up and then place them. Any stems, the stems need to be clean of any leaves. So if you've got any leaves hanging out on your stems, just pull those guys off. But we just want really nice, smooth peony stems. So now that we've got those, this is a focal flower. So we want these guys to really shine. I have a space right here that doesn't have a rose in it. So that right away is where I'm gonna put my first peony. So pick your place. If you have decided you have one side that is your favorite and you want that to be the front, then place one there. And then with your other two, you're gonna utilize them on different sides of the arrangement. So I've got a place down low. Don't forget about this area of your arrangement. You want to fill out the lower part of the arrangement as well. So I'm gonna place one low down there. And then I've got this other gap back here. That would be lovely if it had a little more color. So I'm gonna place the last one back there. I'm leaving it a little bit long so it's got room to open. We want these peonies that are more closed bud form to have a tiny bit more space around them so they can open up. Once you place your peonies, we are gonna grab our delphinium. So our delphinium is a really beautiful line flower. So line flowers are any variety that grow in a line like this. That would be delphinium, larkspur, snapdragons, things like that. So with our delphinium, we wanna get these stems nice and cleaned off. So we want nice clean stems at the bottom, and then we want a pretty cluster of blooms at the top. With delphinium, this seems a bit long to me, just for the scale of this arrangement. So I do want it to only be about this tall. So that means we do have to pull off some of the lower buds, which I know is sad if you're not used to doing it, but we're really just manipulating this to be the correct size and scale for our arrangement. So with all of our delphinium, we are gonna pull off a couple of those lower buds. We just wanna leave this nice little cluster at the top. So same goes with every single piece. If you have any of these lower buds that look like this, that are quite tall, you can absolutely use those in your arrangement. So set those aside as well. And with our delphinium, we should have 5 pieces. We love doing odd numbers because you can kind of get 3 on one side, 2 on the other, and it doesn't look so symmetrical. I like symmetry, I like perfection, but I also like a little bit of imperfection and asymmetry. So that's what we're going for. So now that we have our delphinium all cleaned up, we're gonna get these in our arrangement. Since they are line flowers, we do want them to lean naturally because that is kind of what they look best doing. So we're gonna start by tucking one piece low, and then you're gonna pair it with another piece. Again, you're leaving those stems a little bit longer. You want to be as tall as the base. And then we're gonna pair a taller piece with it. So there's 2 pieces right there. Since I've placed 2 on this side, I'm gonna place 3 over to this side to get that balance. So I am gonna start low and then build up from there. So I've got one low, I've got another that height, and then I've got one more to place. And where should I go? Here. So since we have 5 pieces, I want to get a little bit of blue all over. And I also like to kind of vary the heights of them and the angles that we place them at. If you end up placing them right at the same angle on both sides, you get a little bit of an antenna look. So it's nice to kind of have one that's a little higher, one that's a little lower, just to balance each other out. Once we have placed those, we are going to grab our beautiful anemones. So anemones can also be tricky because they have hollow, kind of straw-like stems. They can easily get damaged by the chicken wire in the vase. So when we're placing these in, we want to make sure that if you're feeling any resistance, like it's really hard to get it in that spot, then you want to take it out and move it elsewhere. So with our anemones, this one is huge and beautiful, but we're gonna make a nice sharp angled cut, and then we're gonna pick 3 places that we want to place these. So we are gonna slide that guy in very gently. We wanna thread it into the vase. So if you need to use 2 hands to kind of guide it down in there, then you absolutely should. So I've placed one here, and since I have 3, I always kind of, like I said before, I like to pair 2 kind of close together and then 1 elsewhere. So since I've got 1 here, I'm gonna do 1 nearby, but just a little bit higher. So they're still staggered, still look kind of natural and garden-like. It's all coming together. And we are almost finished. So our last ingredient that we're going to place are our tweedia. And by the way, I just got those anemones in there so effortlessly, and that is not normal. So if it's taking you a couple of minutes to figure out where your anemones can go, where they're not getting damaged and your stem is not splitting, take your time, find a place, seek out a hole in the arrangement, and then place them there. It's not always as easy breezy as that just was that time. So now that we have our anemones in, and again, pause, take your time if you need to, but we are gonna grab our tweedia. So tweedia is a very interesting flower because it emits a white sap, and the white sap comes out when you take these leaves off. So when you're taking the leaves off, which we need to do because we want a nice clean stem, you will get a little bit of white sap coming out of the stem. They also have a really interesting smell. People either like the smell of tweedia or hate it. Mostly I've heard hate or don't love, so it is an interesting scent, but they are the most beautiful, delicate little blue flower. Love this as a blue accent. So since we've got that light blue delphinium, we're tying in these pastels with our final little accent of blue tweedia. So we're gonna pull off any of those lower leaves and then any lower buds that might be hanging down a little too far. I just, again, want a really nice little cluster of blooms at the top for that accent of blue. So once these are nice and clean, we are going to place these. So since we have the blue delphinium concentrated kind of over here and over here, I want to get a little hit of blue in the, what I think is now the front of my arrangement. There. And then again, if you've still got a hole in your arrangement, or if you've left everything a little too long and you need to tuck it down, then use this tweedia to kind of fill in those last little places that might need a fill flower. This tweedia is just the perfect little delicate addition to a pastel palette. There, and then I've got one more piece, so hard to decide where to put it. I think I'm gonna go up top, kind of in the center. And even though I didn't even really plan it, I still ended up with 2 nearby each other and then 1 on the opposite side. So I've got my little 2 pieces here, 1 over here, and that is our completed pastel arrangement. Beautiful mix of blues, whites, and soft pinks, perfect for spring, perfect for entertaining. So hopefully you get to enjoy these flowers. I'll bring that a little bit closer so you can see. If you're having trouble with anything or not liking the shape of your arrangement, remember you can always remove things, give them a fresh cut, and place them back in. It's not too late to kind of triage and fix things. Be sure that you are looking at your arrangement all the way around, making sure that you've made all your stems have made it into the water, and make sure that you don't have any that are poking through your leaf. So look down there, make sure you haven't punctured your leaf. But that is our final finished arrangement. Make sure that you are properly caring for your arrangement. You want to add fresh water to it daily, and in a couple days you're probably going to want to run the faucet over the arrangement just gently in the sink so your water can displace and new can be added in. We are designing in chicken wire, which means that your arrangement will stay together. But since you have a tea leaf, that means you also can pick up the tea leaf with it. This will stay together so you can change your water. See how dirty my water already is just after that class and after designing this? So I'm gonna go and fresh change this right away, and then it's gonna be very happy. So then you just need to place that back down in there, make sure your leaf is touching the bottom of the vase, your stems are all in, and then you can change the water every couple days, and it will definitely help your arrangement last longer. Another thing is if you notice an ingredient is looking sad or looking like it's starting to rot, pull that one ingredient out and toss it, because it'll help everything else last a little longer if anything that is starting to grow bacteria in there gets ditched. So if anything starts to look sad, pull that one ingredient, and the rest of the ingredients, it should help them to thrive a little longer. I hope you enjoyed this class, and we thank you so much for being a part of our workshop program. We look forward to seeing you next time.